start from the beginning with that initial outreach from the Student Body Association and how they wanted to highlight you and spotlight you on the Instagram?
Yeah, so for the first email that we got was from the official admissions office on school. So these were faculty members who reached out to us as the Federalist Society and said, hey, over the course of the summer, we want to highlight every student organization. So send us a group photo and then a bio of the organization, and pick 2 of your officers or 2 of your members, whoever feels comfortable being spotlighted, and they'll get their own individual post as well with a photo and a bio that they write. So I sent in a photo and a bio. One of my vice presidents sent in a photo and a bio as well, and the group in general. Now that was the last we heard of it. That was a couple months ago. And I had a feeling at the time, just knowing my school, it would get kind of interesting when that eventually got posted, but I'd honestly forgotten about it until at some point in the middle of last week, when we got an email from the Student Bar Association. The whole school got an email. So this is essentially student leadership on campus, saying we're aware of the post on Instagram, and we're working with faculty to decide if the post should stay up. We absolutely condemn the thoughtlessness and the insensitivity in posting it in the first place. And I thought, oh boy, it must have gone on Instagram. This must be about us.
Yeah, and let me, I have this post right here because it's still up on their Instagram right now. And so the post that you're talking about, that there was all this outrage about, if you'll allow me, because this is a description that you wrote for them to post about the Federalist Society. So I'm going to read that really quick, and then you can tell me what happened after that, and we'll also read through some of the comments too. So they said, this week's student group highlight, the Federalist Society. The Federalist Society is about law, not politics. It is a group for people of all ideological backgrounds to come together to agree that laws should be understood as they were intended, and that bad or incomplete laws should be changed through legitimate constitutional means, i.e. legislation, not rogue judicial opinions. The Federalist Society is founded on the principles that the state exists to preserve freedom, that the separation of governmental powers is central to our Constitution, and that it is emphatically the province and duty of the judiciary to say what the law is, not what it should be. So this is the post, and this is the description that got all the outrage. So what happened after that? What did you hear next?
So I looked up the post on Instagram after having been warned through this email that it was inflammatory and that, you know, we all needed to take microaggression training and the like because of how concerning this post was. So I went and I saw this post with my description. I saw that many comments were, all of the comments were negative. I had received shortly after this a private message from a fellow student whom I've never met, who said, I don't know you, but if you ever see me on campus, don't even think about talking to me. I'm disgusted to go to the same school as you. And a lot of people concerned that that definition that we had provided was not quite accurate of the Federalist Society, and that the Federalist Society was actually a white supremacist organization, that it wished harm and even death upon LGBT folks, and all of those sorts of things. I should also point out in that definition that I wrote, those things that I did change from the national definition provided by the Federalist Society was a line where the Federalist Society nationally describes itself as conservative and libertarian. Mm-hmm. I don't talk about politics much on campus because I want to separate law from politics, and I don't like when judges mix the two. But I can tell you that I'm the only conservative in the Federalist Society at UCI, and that's fine by me. Every single person that I know in that group, last year we had one anarchist, and everyone else that I know is certainly to the left of me. And so we can at least agree, if not on policy, on what the role of government is. And so those last few phrases of description about the separation of powers, the role of judges to not write their own law, that the state exists to preserve freedom, that all does come from the national definition. So it is kind of a hybrid. And what was changed was just to reflect that UCI generally doesn't have a lot of conservative voices.
Yeah, and that's kind of the whole point of you and I talking right now, is Why do you think that is? Why do you think that when you came onto campus that you were one of the few? You've told me, I think on the phone, you told me that you could count on one hand the amount of conservative students that you've been able to connect with on campus. So why do you think that's happened? Why do you think it's like that?
I mean, I could give you a number of reasons, and I'm sure there are more that I'm not aware of, but just from what I've seen, UCI is a very openly left-leaning school. The UC schools are generally, law schools tend to attract, any kind of higher education tends to attract more left-leaning students. And so you can kind of chalk that all up together, but especially when our law school regularly puts out statements favoring the political left, it doesn't make a lot of people feel confident coming to this school that they'll be heard. Whereas for me, I actually decided to come to UCI in part because I wanted to be one of the few conservative campus. I wanted to hear what other people had to say. I wanted to strengthen my own arguments. And unfortunately, that's not generally seen as a valuable exercise on campus. Instead, people tend to enjoy the bubble they live in.
Yeah, speaking of the bubble, these are some of the comments that were on that post, which is the extreme tone deafness and disgusting perpetuation of racist, sexist, white lawyering highlighted in this post makes me ashamed to be a part of UCI. You need to edit this description to say that this is a description of the group written by the group. I'm assuming this reads like it's UCI law's own position on the organization, but it is an organization that's a part of UCI. So of course, the president of such organization would organize that in his particular way. So there was quite a few of those things. And you mentioned that it's very left-leaning, and those left-leaning policies are openly supported. One in particular was not too long ago. They had a post, they have a post about lawyering for reproductive justice, which is a very leftist idea, right?
Absolutely. And I, in fact, talked to someone recently who's considering coming to UCI Law, and I don't know if she's made her decision yet. But we spoke about the Federalist Society, and she said she would like to start a pro-life group at UCI Law. And I told her, good luck. I don't know that you'll find a whole lot of sympathy in that effort. You will from myself and from a couple of other students that I know. But we tend to live in the shadows. And in fact, some of the comments, if you'll look through that Instagram post, one of the reasons or evidences that people will cite for how the Federalist Society is such a hateful and loathsome group is we dare to take a pro-life stance, at least with jurisprudence, at least thinking that that Roe v. Wade should be overturned. And so the very stance on abortion makes us white supremacists and sexists and all of that sort of thing. So there really is not any room for disagreement there. But you're right in pointing to this group that's very far leaning to the left. We were not the first group highlighted. In fact, one of the groups highlighted was the American Constitution Society, which has always been, I guess you could say, a rival, but in friendly terms with the Federalist Society. We have opposing views on how laws should be read and interpreted. And often the two groups will host debates where each will kind of pick a mascot, get someone to come debate another representative. And it's a very civil and fun exercise. So if the American Constitution Society can get highlighted, but the Federalist Society can't, that's the very definition of content-based discrimination under the First Amendment, and that's just absurd.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to get to, I do, before we end today, I do want to talk about some of the history of the Federalist Society, because I think it's often mischaracterized as being connected to the Federalist political party, which is two totally different things. So we'll get to that. So after this post went up, after there was all the outrage, the school's immediate knee-jerk reaction before ever consulting you was to put out this public apology, not only through that email that you mentioned, but also as a post on the Instagram. And they didn't actually contact you until after they posted this apology, right?
Correct.
So in this apology, they say that they agree that it was bad timing and that they shouldn't have posted it, and that they should that they apologize both for the timing of the post and for disabling the comments. I guess at some point comments were disabled. We appreciate the members of our community who reached out to us and welcome conversations with any student or group of students. You spoke, we will continue to listen, and we will take affirmative steps to evaluate how best to manage this account, keeping your concerns in mind. So whose concerns exactly are they keeping in mind here?
Well, the very vocal, I think, majority, given my experiences on campus. But what's so interesting about all of this, I mean, they repeatedly apologized for the timing of the post. And I find that to be maybe a little bit misleading, kind of a red herring, because if the evidence that they give, or when they talk about the timing, they're saying with everything going on because it's Pride Month or because of Juneteenth or the protests that are going on around the country, I can maybe understand an argument that there was a better organization to highlight this week. But to say that the Federalist Society, and they didn't ask us when we should be posted, they didn't tell us they were going to post. I found out because of the, no, I found out because of the email that had been posted. But as far as the timing goes, to say that it's bad timing to highlight the Federalist Society and then call us the white supremacist organization, I fail to understand what would be good timing to highlight a white supremacist organization. And if we're not a racist group, why would it be bad timing to highlight us during the week of Juneteenth? I don't understand. Either way, it doesn't really make sense. And obviously, people have been very open that their concern is not just with the timing, maybe the timing made it worse, but that their central concern is that the Federalist Society is a white supremacist organization, which for one thing is patently false, observably false. It's ridiculous. I don't even feel like going into debunking that. But on the other hand, especially at UCI, I'm the only white male in the Federalist Society. Every single one of my colleagues, we have, I believe, one white female in the group. Everyone else is a person of color. Both of my vice presidents are people of color. And in fact, they were going to post these individual bios for myself and for one of my vice presidents who was Black. He was the next one in line. The school contacted him to say, do you want us to put this up? Do you feel safe with us putting this up, given the outrage that we've seen online? And he appreciated that. I thought that was a nice gesture. But I thought that would be the ultimate of ironies, to have all of these students attacking the white supremacist organization and then see the first featured officer, vice president, a Black student. They just have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely, which actually leads us right into what happened with this town hall meeting that happened on Monday. So was that, I remember you mentioning, was that town hall meeting essentially set up because of this?
So they set up town halls weekly for the students, and it's usually conducted by one of the assistant deans. But to my understanding, the dean of the law school was brought on to this town hall with the objective that they would address the Instagram post, the problematic Instagram post.
Right. And this was a 2.5-hour town hall, which I joined in thanks to your invitation. And they didn't actually address it at all until an hour into the town hall. It was almost exactly to the dot an hour later when she started talking about it. And you and I were texting throughout, and I have our messages here because you were sending me really valid thoughts and giving me really great quotes. And there was one particular student I remember that gave a very impassioned speech that you could tell she had written ahead of time and was reading to, you know, how many students were there, a few hundred students were there at that point. And she had mentioned a couple of times, and so had other people, that this is a group that was known for their white supremacist background. And if I were the dean of a school, of any school, and I had chosen to highlight a particular group, and the immediate backlash was, this is a white supremacist group, this is anti-Black, this is this, that, and the other. And especially in this climate that we have now, my first thought would be to say, this is not a white supremacist group. First off, just so that everybody's clear, this is not a white supremacist group. That would be a reasonable reaction from any dean, in my opinion. Has the UCI dean of the School of Law of UCI, has she said that up to this point? Has she openly denied the fact that this is not a white supremacist group?
Absolutely not. And that's distressing to me, particularly because I generally have a very high opinion of my dean. I respect her a lot. I have seen her on multiple occasions tell students, no, it is important to have dissenting viewpoints around us. It is important. It's vital that we be able to have these conversations. So I expected more from her in that town hall, and it was a little bit distressing and disappointing to watch her initial reaction apologetic rather than pushing back at all. What's kind of ironic is also today there was another town hall on a separate topic, and you weren't part of this one. But at one point, a student accused somebody of lying, and one of the vice or assistant deans pushed back and said, now, we must be civil here. We do not accuse people of things like that. So we can push back when there are accusations of lying, but white supremacy, no, we just have to coddle and say, I understand how you're feeling, and I'm so sorry, you're right, the timing was awful, which to me is, again, a tacit endorsement of the opinion that it is a white supremacist group, because like I said, why would the timing be problematic otherwise? And to continue to say, as she said at one point, and it was a little bit ambiguous, I'll give her maybe the benefit of the doubt, but she did say something to the effect of, everything you're saying right now, I've felt that when I was a law student and I still feel it, which to me sounded a little bit like she agreed that the Federalist Society is a white supremacist organization. And at best, her response was, I can't do anything about it. We need free speech. And that just made me feel more like the dean saw the Federalist Society as the Nazi parade in Skokie that we just have to allow to exist for the betterment of our constitutional principles, but that we're not personally going to defend or say, no, we might disagree with them, but let's at least say they're not white supremacists, they're not Nazis, they're not racist. I know these students personally, and I know that that's not who they are. And I know that they would not be representatives of that kind of organization, but we got none of that from her.
Mm-mm. And I thought it was also interesting. They said over and over, both her and the assistant dean said over and over that we want to take questions and input from all students, right? And while the dean herself was just hosting and talking and interacting with people, the assistant dean was taking messages, and she was taking messages privately. If you wanted to be anonymous, you didn't want to necessarily speak in front of these hundreds of people. A lot of people aren't comfortable with that, but you did want your input to be taken into account. You reached out to her privately and said anonymously that I'm with the Federalist Society. And if you don't mind, if I can read part of the message here.
Absolutely.
You said, hi, Dr. J. I am with the Federalist Society and I would like to remain anonymous. If the organization is truly white supremacist, as students are claiming, which is blatantly false, what good would different timing on Instagram do? Is Dean Richardson willing to affirm that Federalist Society is not white supremacist? If Federalist Society is not racist, why is the timing problematic? If it is racist, how would different timing help? And of course, the intention of these questions, of people sending in anonymous questions, is for it to be read out loud so that the dean can respond. That's the point of a town hall. Instead, you received this message. Hi, Richie. I would love to follow up with you later. Do you have time to chat this afternoon or over the weekend or early next week? So your question was not read aloud, nor was any other conservative viewpoints questions read aloud. And what was the result of that? What's happened after that?
Well, I would first like to point out that it's possible there weren't that many conservative voices to be heard in the town hall. Town halls kind of have a reputation, whether at a city level or at a school or whatever, of attracting the more crazed or, let's say, passionate people who are very vocal, and everyone else kind of gets left behind. I found UCI's town hall to be quite an accurate microcosm of what campus life is like. Very, very vocal people, unafraid to state how they feel, assuming that everyone agrees with them, and conservative students, or at least conservative sympathetic students, kind of hiding in the back of the room and deciding it's not worth the headache today. But I did get that message from the assistant dean to contact her privately. I sent her my availability. We were eventually able to set up a call, and she was wonderful. She was gracious. We had a 45-minute conversation in which she reassured me, I don't believe you're a white supremacist. I don't believe the Federalist Society is a white supremacist organization. I've had a lot of great experiences with the Federalist Society. She told me that in certain years at UCI, the Federalist Society has dwindled and been on the verge of extinction. She has personally scoured the campus to find people who will bring or to breathe life back into the organization. So she expressed a lot of personal support, and I loved that and appreciated it. And she was also very welcoming in receiving some of my feedback, hearing my feelings about the situation, that at the very least, I would expect the dean of my law school to be able to say, this is not a white supremacist organization. Now, she said she can't make any promises, and that's not her fault. Of course, I understand. Any kind of official statement from the school is going to take a lot of scrutiny, both from a public relations standpoint, and also it's a law school. From a legal standpoint, they have to be very careful about how they phrase things. But I was able to express to her, at the bare minimum, I would love to see, I would expect to see the dean disavowing these claims that we're white supremacists.
And on that note, you mentioned how a lot of time has to go into formulating these public responses. Why do you think that amount of time and energy and concern was not put into this apology post and this apology email?
I'm not sure that I could tell you. I do know that among some of the comments that were taken down, when the comments were disabled on that Instagram post, there were some very ugly comments about our group, even worse than the ones that you read before. There was one calling us devil worshippers, for instance. But on the other hand, there were several calls for the dean to resign. Now, we're not calling for the dean to resign, and I made that clear as well in the phone call with the assistant dean. We're not out for blood here. We would just like be treated as if we're allowed to be on campus and not be smeared. I don't think I need to explain to anybody the kind of damage that it can do to your entire life, career, to be labeled a white supremacist by the dean of your law school, or at least have her allow that to happen. So I think that the law school tends to run scared a little bit of its students. It's one of the few institutions that I've seen that really bucks the stereotype that the faculty tends to lean further left than the students, and bring the students in a more left-leaning direction with them. That's the reputation I've seen of a lot of colleges. At UCI Law, it seems to be a little bit the other way around most of the time, that the students are the ones pulling at the faculty to move a little bit more left. And I think that the school got a little bit scared, wanted to rush something out and post something. Now, it didn't placate the mob. It didn't make anyone particularly happy, but they do seem to be a little bit quicker on the draw, as it were, when it comes to those kinds of statements.
Yeah. So where is that situation at now? I know that you said that there was a promise of a follow-up. What are you expecting next? What do you think is going to happen next?
We've been told that there will be a follow-up town hall specifically on this issue, so we'll see about that. And then who knows, there will be a statement, and what kind of statement that will be. I've had people reach out to me since then. Oh, so I guess on the first thing, I've been assured by the Student Bar Association and by the assistant dean that several students have reached out to them defending the Federalist Society, and I've been reached out to personally by people who are interested in joining the Federalist Society starting next semester. So I think eventually this dies down, assuming the faculty doesn't make much worse. As a conservative student on campus and an openly straight white male Christian who has a family and who is all these things. Like I said, I don't talk about politics, but I am an open originalist on campus. I'm used to those looks. I'm used to those accusations. We'll be able to carry on.
Yeah, well, that's a really positive note to kind of wrap up with. So what I wanted to do then is finally just give you the opportunity to talk about what's truly the origins of the Federalist Society. What is it? And I know, to kind of start you off, it started in 1982, and it's an organization of law students across the nation. And really, it's more of a passive organization, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say so. The full name of the organization is the Federalist Society of Law and Public Policy Studies. We don't really focus on the public policy at UCI, but in general, you don't hear about UCI stumping for laws as much as they do insisting that words have meanings and that they be taken at face value. I like to say, when I'm recruiting people to the Federalist Society, words don't go through puberty. They are what they are. They mean what they mean when they were written. Even if someone doesn't have a per se love for the Constitution, contract law is very clear that whatever subjective meaning parties had behind the word, whatever subjective understanding they had in the language they used when forming a contract. That is the language, that is the meaning of the language in their contract. Well, that's how it should work with all of our laws and our Constitution, which are contracts between the people in forming our government. The words have meaning for when they were written, and that can change over time. We've seen, 27 amendments to the Constitution since it was originally ratified. Obviously, it can change. Many of those amendments were very good things. I'm a big fan of the first 10. I'm a very big fan of the 13th Amendment and several others. So we can change those things on our own if we would like to, but it's not the province of the judges to exercise will rather than judgment, as Alexander Hamilton described in Federalist 78.
Yes, and Federalist 78, which is what I wanted to mention as well, is the paper that the Federalist Society is based on. So if anybody is interested in looking up really what it's about and what it follows, that's the paper you can go ahead and read. So is there anything else that you want to share that you don't feel like you've had a chance to yet before we sign off?
One quick thought about, thank you for that. One quick thought about Federalist 78 and about the Federalist Society generally. Federalist 78, at the time it was written, did not seem to be one of the more important papers in the compilation, but today it is one of the most cited and one of the most important for us, specifically for this reason. Alexander Hamilton mentioned that the judiciary, by its nature, should be the least dangerous of all the branches because it would have the least capacity to injure or annoy the rights protected under the Constitution. The Federalist Society is one of the few organizations I have ever seen that actively proposes less power for itself in government, that wants to peel back the powers that the judiciary has wrongfully taken. The Federalist Society is not a selfish organization. It simply believes words matter, freedom matters, and everyone has a role to play within our system of checks and balances. And if those roles are not respected, the whole system crumbles.
Which seems to be the exact message of this so-called BLM movement. So I think it's very interesting and ironic that this happens to be the very society and the very organization that the students at UCI chose to attack. So thank you so much for your time today, Richie. I really, really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing what's going to happen, and I hope that she does exactly, Dean Richardson does exactly what is right, which is express very openly that this is not a white supremacist organization, that you are not anti-Black, that you actually support not only people of color, but left-leaning liberals as well, and that has nothing to do with politics and everything to do with following the letter of the law, which so many people in this country right now are calling for. So thank you so much for clearing that up for everybody.
Thank you very much.